Welcome to another episode of Unshakable Self-Confidence, where we're providing a clear path to confidence so you can believe in yourself, achieve your goals, and enjoy your life. I'm your host, Billy Atwell, and today we're being joined by the author of Stop, Smile, Breathe, Be, and the host of the online show Awake Life, Brian Marc Zimberg. Welcome, Brian. How are you today?
Very good. Thank you, Billy. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Brian, you are known for meditation and, to use the common language, enlightenment and sort of this oneness. So I was hoping today that you could help everyone to really understand the misconceptions about inner peace and oneness and some of those things that can be really confusing.
Yeah, for sure. I think that ultimately what it comes down to, if we just said it, say it simply first, and then we can get in maybe some deeper ways that we kind of convolute what's already clear to us. And that is that, we've all had these moments in nature where we experience perfection, where we are blown away, we are in awe. And in that moment, whether it's a beautiful sunset, for me, it's always going around the cliffs of a PCH highway and those beautiful vistas of down to the ocean. And we're just blown away for a moment. And that moment of being blown away, we're connected to everything. We don't experience ourselves as separate, really. We're there, but we're not there. We're whole, we're complete. And we get that clarity that, wow, everything is perfect. And then there's the next moment our mind comes, maybe it says that sunset's beautiful. And already our mind is actually taking us one step out of that moment. And we slowly move away from that moment in our labeling and our dissecting. So to recognize directly that trying to get to oneness, trying to get to happiness is really still all being done in what I call a separate paradigm. The separate paradigm is where our attention is in our thoughts, right? One of the biggest misconceptions of meditation alone is the idea that we're going to get rid of our thoughts. And, dare I say, even with a lot of Eastern approach, there's an idea of getting rid of your ego, which I really think is actually just misunderstood. So what happens is that the ego mind, our individual conversation in our own head, is now focused on trying to get rid of our own thoughts. So the only thing trying to get rid of the ego is actually the ego. The only thing trying to get rid of the thoughts are more thoughts. So when we're finally willing, instead of trying to get to happiness, get to oneness, and if it's really here right now, then my question, I guess, to you and to anyone listening right now is, why can't you directly experience that oneness experience you've had in nature, or in a moment of orgasm it's there? Why can't you have that experience right now? Is nature not occurring now? Is your breath being breathed? Are you consciously trying to breathe right now every moment? If you just tune into your breath for a moment, you notice that breathing is happening. So when it's counterintuitive from the survival animal to finally turn so inward, not to get rid of anything, not to escape anything, but to actually receive the moment. And in the receiving of this moment, and stop and not seeking anymore, we find that what we've been looking for is actually already here.
So what do you recommend people, or how do you help guide it? Because I know from my own experience and my own journey, getting to that point where there was a lot of resistance, a lot of fear. But I do have to say that sort of just being in whatever condition and whatever sort of situation is going through, it's actually really wonderful, even if it's a bad circumstance, when you are, like you said, have those moments that you have in nature, but in every moment of your life. And I don't know, I didn't personally have a coach other than from, coming from a Christian study background of, following the Holy Ghost and just trusting that and learning how to trust that. But, that is really, for a lot of people that I talk to, that's a difficult thing, right? We come, particularly in the West, we come from a Judeo-Christian Muslim background that is about that separateness. And I don't know, how do you help people to get through that confusion and really just experience life as it's happening and seeing it as, I'll use my own words, as a gift. It's the ultimate gift.
Truly is. That's for sure. The ultimate gift. Well, I mean, even you're just saying it like that is, what I share is access points. These access points are ways of shifting out of our mind. Kind of what I start, the whole premise, I guess you could say for me, is that what meditation really is shifting your attention out of your mind, getting out of your mind. And, I lost my mind at 18 years old, walking over coals in an Anthony Robbins seminar. And probably if I had the support of somebody who recognized that I was kind of shifting out of my identity for a moment, I was letting go of my mind, I would have had a full awakening. Instead, I ended up being doped up in a psych ward and fighting for my life and my own sanity. And at 18 years old, in that hospital, in a room, thrown in a mattress, locked up in a room with no one to turn to, no one to help me. And in that moment of that hell, something deep within me said, "You're okay." And you could call that Holy Spirit. You could call that kind of that inner tuition communication, right? But it was more than just words. It was a deep sense of okay.
Mm-hmm.
Years later, I recognized that we're in our minds believing anything, really. That's where our own convolution and insanity comes from. When we're projecting into the future, let's take a simple look at this. Okay, fear or worry that arises based on something that's going to happen in your life tomorrow, the next day, something important to you, or something that you're worried about that you're going to lose. If you really wrote everything down that you worry about, and you looked at all the anxiety and the conversation in your head and the resistance and the discomfort and the disease, the dis-ease we cause ourselves, and then you take a week or two and you look back, how many of those worries actually came to fruition? How many of those problems just dissolved and went away on their own? And how many of them really needed our juice and our attention? And did our worrying about those things and did our anxiety about those things help us in dealing with those problems? So usually 90-some% of the time, we've just wasted a lot of energy and time and causing a lot of dis-ease and discomfort to ourselves and others around us. So the convolution of our own suffering is choosing to have our attention on our thoughts. So how do we bring that into something simple? And I think, like you said, this is gratitude is something I call simple G, but simply being grateful, right? In the 80s, there was a lot of great gratitude teachings and gratitude journals, and all that's beautiful. But if we go to what I like to call the third level of gratitude, and that's starting to be grateful that you're breathing. And the thing is, with a lot of what I share, is it's so simple that the mind just wants to overlook it and jump to the next thing. So it takes a little bit of a dedication, because it's counterintuitive to turn to yourself, actually, to your own self that you are, and to really enjoy that you are being, because we're so addicted to a conceptual way of dealing with everything in life, right? So we're going to do A, then do B to get to C. And that comes along the same way as you can't get to happiness. You can't get to fulfillment, right? Buddha called life suffering because everything we accomplish, get, receive, gives us a temporary hit of fulfillment, and then it fades away. So how then do we stop seeking, really? To me, it's a reverse conversation. It's not about what are the ABCs and how to get to fulfillment, oneness, or happiness, but how do I start to notice that I'm in my thoughts all the time? And then how do I notice I'm in my thoughts all the time without trying to get rid of my thoughts, but just allowing my thoughts to be what they are, which is thoughts? And this is really a shift that occurs as we just allow ourselves to root our attention here. So gratitude is a great doorway to the present, because in gratitude, there's no need. And you can do this right now. For anyone listening, you could, for a moment, just think of somebody you're grateful for. And bring that person to your attention in your mind for a moment, and just open your heart and just really receive that person for a moment, what you're grateful for, and see their smile and just the energy that they bring to your life. And just say to yourself, I am grateful for, I'll say my wife. I am grateful for my wife. And just say that out loud to yourself. And you'll notice in that moment, there's no problem. There is no need. So when we cultivate a simple gratitude that we are, that we exist, that we're breathing, before moving into an evaluation of our mental idea of how our life is going or how it should look or should turn out, or is it going to be okay? We find that there's actually a deeper bedrock than the suffering of life. That deeper bedrock is already free of all problems, already whole. And that's where oneness really lies. So we start to cultivate our core attention moving towards beingness itself, as opposed to, let's say, when you're driving a car, your core attention hopefully is on the road and on the speedometer, right? Now you can still sit and we could be having a conversation and I could be changing the radio channels. But if my core attention is not on the road and staying between the lines, I'm going to crash. So what is happening for all of us right now is that we are part of this development of being human and coming into creation and into life. Our entire me story, me who's the lead in the movie and everybody else is a secondary player, that really is the first addiction for all of us. We wake up in that me story and we go to sleep in that me story.
Yeah, when you were talking about what were you grateful for and to think of that person, and then you continued with that meanness. And for me personally, when I was thinking, it was like, I think that a lot of people have a tough time with that, sort of the unconditional love, that you have to accept that person as a whole. And it's that ego part, that animal part of you're not doing things the way that I want you to. And I love you, but you're not doing the things I want you to. And I find that fascinating too.
Which really comes to like our ideas of should and shouldn't.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And our analyzing again of how something is supposed to be in our idea and how it's supposed to look. And it all comes back to our me story. So my story tells me that life should look this way and I want this to be this way and I'm fighting everything to be a certain way. Einstein said that you have to change a problem at the level of the problem. You have to go to a different level. So the best level to deal with any problem, any anxiety, any stress would go to 0 point. 0 point would be coming back to oneness, coming back to presence, coming back to simply being grateful that you are alive. Like that, it's like I can go more complicated, but I can promise, like if you would just take a week or two daily, 3 or 4 or 5 times, just check in. Am I breathing? Do I need to do anything to breathe? No. Okay, can I be grateful that I'm breathing? You could even say to yourself, I am grateful that I'm breathing. To cultivate gratitude that you are shifts everything. And what it shifts everything, what I mean by that is eventually, instead of using your mind to try to get to a future event where you're going to be more fulfilled or happier, you start like water into sand to more seep into this moment. You start to receive life. The mind is always, a survival animal is always labeling, dissecting, compartmentalizing, analyzing, and it's in a constant anxiety to protect itself. So like, that's 2 parts really, right? We all know and understand that the anxiety of the animal and our mind is protecting our physical body. I joke around, if you're swimming in the ocean and a shark is coming, you don't look at the shark and go, oh, let me receive how beautiful you are and have compassion for you. And we're one shark. We're your nature and you're beautiful as it's trying to eat you. Fear has its place, right? I mean, if the animal didn't feel fear, you'd walk down that street where something bad could happen, right? You let the shark eat you. So we swim away. So we all get that the body mechanism, right? The survival animal is protecting its physical body. But something so under the radar that we just don't take a moment to really inquire upon and see. And this is really the root of all your suffering, all anxiety. And that's that the body-mind mechanism is constantly protecting its idea of itself as something special and separate. So not just separate, but special and separate, right? And this could appear as the inflated ego. I'm the best. I'm so wonderful. Or as the deflated ego, right? I'm the worst. There's no one more pathetic than me. There's no one more depressed than me. But as long as this ego can convince itself that it's separate and okay, just like it's protecting its physical body, the ego, and this is kind of what Freud was trying to talk about, this neurosis, right? This constant neurosis. So that constant neurosis is constantly, vigilantly trying to protect itself from being destroyed. So if oneness is true, then maybe I'm not separate. The mind can't face that, right? They call that kind of an ego death, right?
Mm-hmm.
In spiritual terms sometimes. So it's not nothingness. It's not emptiness, like that there's nothing there. It's infinite vastness, totality. It's the beauty of everything being held in perfection by God, by life, in this space of allowing. And when we let ourselves shift to that space of allowing, we can start to see the survival animal and see that it has certain ways that it's constantly trying to protect itself. And when we start to become aware and the witness of these patterns, then we don't have to try to fix ourselves anymore. We don't have to try to get rid of something anymore. We can choose to actually choose the moment and allow those things to come and go. And from that, a wisdom and a discernment comes about. And you can start to discern, is my attention with what comes and goes, or is my attention with what is always here?
So I know that this too was difficult for me because when you go on that spiritual quest and, to use the Joseph Campbell, language, you go into the labyrinth, you discover the oneness, the non-duality, and hopefully, like in the mythology, you return into the field of duality with that knowledge of oneness. I'm assuming that that's what you're talking about. That's my interpretation, is that you realize that you're man by nature, but God by the grace of God, and you live your life that way. Is that pretty much what you're saying as well?
Yeah, that it's possible. It is truly, truly possible for every individual. It's your divine birthright to finally, right now, release into life and recognize that you are already whole, you are already complete. So the ego mind wants to be that special, separate self, but you are already unique. Your DNA is like no other. This moment is unlike any other.
Yeah.
And it's only in the convolution of our minds, worry, fear of the future, or regret or regurgitation of the past. If you wrote down the thoughts that bother you in your mind, because the mind has a endless toolkit to beat ourselves up, right?
It has a host of a catalog, if you will.
A catalog for sure. It has no end to being able to just bombard you with how bad you are and no good you are, and the things that we can say to ourselves. So we can learn how to shift the negative thoughts in our mind to positive thoughts. And that's a step in a great direction, right? Because who wants a bunch of negative thoughts in our mind? I say, like, you can sit at a dinner table and know that you don't want to pick your nose at the dinner table anymore. That's not the best manners. You could do it, but is it the best manner? So too, like, fixing and working on ourselves to get to happiness, it's a perpetual thing. So learning to negate negative thoughts with positive thoughts is still kind of this battle in our mind. So what happens when we just start to become the witness of our mind? What happens when we start to just receive life? What really happens is we can start to let go of worry altogether. The basis for who we think we are and what our life is about is all hinged on this underlining depth of fear and struggle and suffering that all of us want to escape, that none of us really want to have anymore.
I was just thinking, sorry, that, and a lot of it is, it becomes quite a revelation when you realize that you are the source of all your suffering. I found that fascinating on my journey. That was like, oh, I didn't have to be that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even more so, I don't know if it's that you didn't have to be that way, because basically, if everything that is occurring has occurred and you take off your, like, judgments about it for a moment, right?
Yeah.
And you just start getting to the isness of things. So even the isness of your past, right? There's the things that you thought you had to do and the things you thought you should have done better. And we can learn from these things, but there's still labels on what is just simply what is actually occurring, and what is my interpretation of what's occurring. And the struggle and the suffering, like you said, we're creating that suffering, but it's because our attention is in this separate self that is trying to get rid of the interpretation instead of just allowing the body mind to be what it is. So like I joke with people like, Billy, what if you just take for a moment, like your phone, say you take an Apple computer or your phone and you just pop it on your head. And for a moment, you just see your mind as literally this computer, this operating system. You know, we can complain about our phone and it's working good or not, but the features and the function of the phone are the features and the function of the phone. The features of your mind and the operating system of your mind and its survival strategies and its thinking and its bombarding and beating you up and all these things are the movement of the mind. And when you can finally allow and accept that without having to find your happiness and joy in it, then everything can change and you can really be here. You know, people are scared of the word God, but God, everything right now is holding you here.
Yeah.
The planets in the sky spinning, your cells communicating, your breath happening. The isness of life is always the bedrock of peace. And the mind always takes you away from it. So you don't have to fix your mind, you don't have to battle your mind. You can weed the garden, but the weeds come back. So that can be a journey of accomplishment and growth towards success. But if that is hinging on your own self-worth, that's hinging on trying to escape fear, trying to escape your emotions, trying to escape being human. See, that's one of the biggest convolutions of the entire spiritual self-help journey, is that there's some place to escape. There's something better somewhere else. And of course, the fearful survival animal wants to escape always. It always wants to protect and escape. So it's not about fixing it or changing it. It's about questioning, who are you really right now? What doesn't come and go right now?
Yeah, the oneness. I often meditate. It's my daily meditation about, you know, as God is, so are we in this world. I think, you know, you have to put it with some purpose and really contemplate it. I know from, like I said, coming from a Christian background and talking and having other Christians on as guests, I think that people fall short of that. It's, you know, I don't know how to describe that, but so.
Listen, I agree with you, and I think that. See, here's the thing: it's like religion is not in the way of direct realization of your divine self.
Yeah.
Right. Even the philosophical way in which the path that you live your life in, right? I've pushed away my Judaism several times on my spiritual journey. You know, changed my name, and I'm not this, and you know, it's like what everyone has jumped from different techniques and different ways, and we tried so hard to find that lasting peace we're looking for. And it's really just to try to get rid of and escape. So I'm kind of inviting people to give up that there is no escape. Give up escaping. Finally have compassion with yourself. But see, the difference is when you're doing something in a separate paradigm, it's you in your mind trying to love yourself. It's you in your mind trying to get rid of fear. And all that can play out. But what if for a moment you just invite yourself just to be with the fear, not to indulge it? See, like when we indulge sadness, it leads to depression. When we repress sadness, it leads to massive anxiety. So how do we finally get intimate with that which we're trying to escape? How do we finally allow whatever's present here without indulging it? And that's to recognize that there's another choice that we're never taught in our lives. And right now, since we've gone here there in this conversation, I would say that choice is just to come back to gratitude for your own breath. Right? That choice is to finally choose to recognize that you are here. The simple sense that you are being. So like right now, if you just allow yourself to just notice that you're here, you put your fingertips together and allow each finger on your hand to touch its opposite finger, and just feel your skin for a moment, touching skin to skin. And allow your attention just to be pulled present by noticing the sensation. Now notice that you're breathing. So there's conscious breathing and breath work, which is great for the body, but that's really not what we're talking about here, right? But just to notice that your breath is coming in and going out. Just see that breathing is happening. Notice that you are here. Just that you are. You're here. You're being here. I'm not talking about the gates of heaven open and you're blissed out and now you're free in some idea you have. Just that you are here. Because we skip that that's enough. Maybe that's everything. And in this space that you're here, feel your feet on the ground. Lift one up and put it down. Just notice your sense of being right here in your body that you are. Now in your mind, I want you to tell yourself something negative about yourself. What's the matter with me? You're such a fool. You're so stupid. Now, you can hook into that and it can create a sensation in your body and a feeling. But just check in. Does that change that you are? Does that negative thought change that you're here? It might change your experience and feeling, but does it change that you're here? That you are? Now say something positive to yourself. Oh no, you're beautiful. You're wonderful. You're not stupid. You're so smart. Now that thought arises and then it goes away. And does it change that you are? The next evolution for your own happiness, and as far as I'm concerned, really the next evolution for humanity, because now, I have 3 children. When I first started being an enlightenment teacher in 2002, Gangaji sent me out to share, and what I was sharing was the direct invitation of Ramana Maharshi's self-inquiry. And that's to shift your attention off your thoughts to awareness itself. So what I'm doing with you right now is just asking you to notice awareness itself, the simple sense that you are. And that doorway, now Stop, Smile, Breathe, Be is a book where I teach you a technique, stop, smile, breathe, be. And you do that 3 times in a row and it brings you to this present moment. And same with all my 5 access points. They shift you out of your mind. So they're shifting. They're doing self-inquiry for you, shifting your attention from the separate survival self that is always in anxiety and suffering, shifting to that awareness that's present. The problem is in a lot of the mindfulness techniques and teachings, a lot of people are still, when you sit to meditate, if you sit to meditate, you sit down as this separate me, survival animal, who's going to do a technique and do that technique to get rid of your thoughts or drop your thoughts or focus or whatever it is. And then eventually in time, that peaceful feeling hopefully is going to arise. So it's still a separate identified individual trying to get somewhere in a way.
So you brought up an interesting point because, I fell under that misconception early on in my own journey until I, did some reading of some medieval, Christian writings and stuff about that really life should be sort of a continuous prayer, a continuous waking meditation.
Beautiful.
Yeah, right. It that was so profound to me that it's, I don't know how to describe it, but so how do you break those myths? How do you break those misconceptions so that people understand? Because, right, that is the vast majority of the enlightenment industry, the meditation industry. It's this.
So I would say give up all hope that your thoughts are going to get you there. Give up all hopes that you can deal with getting to your joy and happiness in the way that you've dealt with anything else in your life. This is we on the journey, we learn about surrender, we learn about acceptance, but again, they become a doing, right? They become this individual survival animal is going to apply acceptance. And that works to a degree. But the acceptance I'm talking about is actually just really embracing this moment, embracing yourself, not you trying to practice mindfulness to be more mindful, like it's going to lead you to something that you can't get there in that typical way. So what this true surrender and true let go is finally noticing the isness of this moment. And that's where I feel from what you're saying is that continual prayer is. It's not you having to remind yourself, pray, pray, pray. It's starting to breathe in that same perfection of oneness that is really here. And it's not like fake it till you make it. Your mind may see horrible things, and there is horror in life, but even in the horror, there's the profundity of totality of God.
Yeah, I think you
So
find that.
even
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you find that a lot more in sort of the Hindu and Eastern mythologies about the totality of God. You know, it's that you have to accept it. I mean, I think that's a lot of some of the Greek myths too. It's like that's where the hero is, when you accept the ugliness and the beauty as
For
one.
sure.
Yeah.
It's like when they talk about gems, right? When they make gems smoother by rubbing them together,
Yeah.
right? They put them in the temple and they rub them together. Michelangelo said about David that he just took away what God already took away for him, right? God already showed him David was there, and he took away what shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
So are we really ever discovering anything? Are we really making anything ever new? We don't have to get into that conversation of one way or the other, but ultimately, like we're uncaving, we're ripping apart in our mind our own lives when really we could just release. So how do you do release? How do you do let go? So what I'm saying is you don't. And the way to get rid of those myths is to stop relying on your mind to get you there. And this takes just a continual shifting of recognizing that you are, and recognizing that everything else comes and goes. Everything, thoughts come and go, feelings come and go. You may have similar feelings come back, regurgitated thoughts, but no thought stays with you all the time. Billy, do you have the same thought all the time, moment to moment, all the time?
Sometimes I wish, but no.
You have the same emotion and feeling every moment of your life all the time?
No, not at all.
And then how you looked when you were younger in high school, do you look the exact same right now?
No, of course not.
So we know that our waves and particles, our molecules and atoms, we know that our own makeup is changing continuously. So what doesn't change? What is always, always here?
Yeah, the source.
Right. And source is it, but for so many of us, just like the word God, for a lot of us has this like man up in the sky who's human-like, and he's looking down on us, right? And he's judging us, and that God is separate from you.
Yeah.
We also have an idea of source.
Yeah.
So in the minute we move into a conception, like the first line of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu says that I'm going to use words to describe the nature of reality, which he was referring to the nature of reality as totality or enlightenment or oneness. But I'm going to use words, and since words are part of the nature of reality, basically he disowned the entire Tao Te Ching in the first line. Because a concept can never reach God. The limited can never experience the limitless. In the moments when we experience oneness, we're not caught up in our separate self. We're connected. And we're all eager for that divine connection, that divine love. So if we stop seeking it, all the other myths fall apart. If you stop believing your mind will get you there. One of the access points I share is called debum. Don't believe your mind. Your mind wants to say, how can I do that? But you can right now, as the great Papaji said, forget everything that can be forgotten. The mind goes, what do you mean? How do I forget everything? Nope, don't even follow that conversation. For a moment right now, forget everything that can be forgotten. And in a moment, there's a taste. And we can call that source, but yet if we hanker on needing to call that source, we're already stepping into the concept and the words. So the transcending of the separate paradigm is where we find freedom. And it's when we stop and have discernment for what comes and goes and what is always here. And notice when our attention, our core attention is stuck on something that comes and goes, which 90% of the time it's on our mind that's coming and going.
Yeah, and I think too, the labeling of something creates the separation. That was what
That's
came
right.
to mind. And the other thing that came to mind too is there's a really great Hopi proverb that I really like. It's just stop the seeking and just be what the Great One, made you to be. That sort of just quit seeking and quit striving. And I think, I find it fascinating. Again, I don't like ripping on religion, but I do find it fascinating that the majority of Christian faith and stuff is about this doing, reaching to this life after this experience. But yet Jesus was like, the kingdom of God is here and you see it not.
Yeah,
You're already in the heaven, and
that's right.
take it all in, because it's the gift. Like we said before, it is the gift.
It is the gift. Life is the gift. It's outside of our judgments of how it's supposed to look or not be. Inside of all of that is this breath, and is this that you are and that you're alive.
Yeah.
So you cultivate that choice to choose to put your attention on that you are here. Now, the mind won't want to do that because it's too simple for the mind, because the mind needs complexity and convolution. And that's okay. Getting rid of the idea of getting rid of thoughts or getting rid of the ego is silly. Like, I don't want you to smush my brain. I don't want you to get rid of my neurons firing. I couldn't be here with my children as a father. I couldn't be here in conversation with you if we didn't have creation and duality. There's nothing to get rid of. And that's just the lie, that we think there's someplace better to get and there's something to get rid of. And surrendering means some difficult, people say it's so difficult to be. And that's because they think it's difficult to stop the thoughts and get rid of the mind and get rid of stuff. So what if you just give up the idea of getting rid of anything?
That's intense.
You'll find that you can receive yourself.
Yeah.
Literally, like in this moment right now, whoever's listening, you right now can receive yourself. And there's an endlessness to the presence of being. There's no end to being awake. There's an end to being asleep, but there's no end to waking up, because where does infinity stop meeting infinity? Where is God not? The idea, like you said, of that, you'll be punished for eternal hell, or that there's a better place to get to somewhere else.
Yeah, that's just religion, in my opinion.
And it's construct of concept in the mind, right?
Yeah.
That keeps us in slavery of seeking instead of the joy of being. The non-dual realization isn't about getting rid of anything. It's an inclusive invitation. So that's if it truly is one, right? Now, anybody on the spiritual journey that has had an experience of oneness, like I've said, everyone's had that experience, whether they think it's so or not, in a moment of orgasm, a moment of nature. That oneness experience is right here for you right now. And all you need to do is breathe and receive. Start to just be grateful that you're alive, grateful that you're breathing. And what will happen eventually is your attention will shift out of your mind to awareness itself. And when you pass the 51% threshold, what I mean by that is when, say you're 50% identified with your mind and 50% starting to recognize moment to moment that oneness and awareness and acceptance is right here, that you are. And you start receiving that isness and the beauty. So the profundity of that clarity and that perfection and that wholeness, you start to experience that 50% of the time. But 50% of the time, you're still caught up in your mind and the story of the me and getting something, getting rid of something and fixing something and the struggle and the suffering. What happens when you go to 51%? Where 51% of the time, your attention is more now with awareness than it is with the mind. Well, your mind and story become the background, and nothing changes and everything changes. That's why, right, they say before enlightenment, chop wood, after enlightenment, chop wood. Which I think is important because those who are into their faith, you know, I practice Judaism in a way I never have in the past, but because in this vibration of Brian existing in this life, my connection to my family and my tribe and my ancestry and practices, they work in a beautiful way of supporting this life stream. So there's nothing to get rid of. So you don't have to get rid of your religion. Your awakening to divinity doesn't call for you to get rid of your religion. And that's a huge myth, right? That like meditation's Eastern.
Yeah.
So what happens when you really just get intimate with yourself? That you get so vulnerable that you let your heart be ripped open. You know, how much art comes from heartbreak? How many songs? Do you remember being like young and having your heart broken and the drama of it and the pain of it? But in some weird way, you were kind of enjoying the drama and the pain. You know, like when we watch a movie and we start crying, we're identified with the characters and we're identified with the story and we're emotionally involved.
Yeah.
So we don't have to stop the story. In fact, the story will never stop. We don't have to get rid of the story, but we can release from the story. The background becomes the front. And we just start to really receive ourselves and recognize that this moment is that perfection. It's not because you have to try to practice for it to be, but slowly as you allow yourself to shift your attention to being grateful for being, like a whirlpool, you'll get pulled in. And if you hear this message from me right now, then it's not by mistake. If you hear why, it's clearly Billy's entire purpose is to set you free. Right, Billy? I mean, that's what you're doing this for, is to set us free.
Mm-hmm.
To let us have that real, true self-confidence. So where does that shine from? Instead of trying to fix yourself and become more confident, what happens when you come back to the kingdom of heaven that is within? True self-confidence, oneself. So when we transcend the separate paradigm, if you know that child's starving over there, somebody you want to help. Now, you can be a person who's altruistic and you're helping in the world and helping somebody over there, but you're still doing it kind of in a separate me story. But when the bedrock for enough of us comes that, wow, I truly am one, then just like if you have gangrene on one hand and the other hand is doing something pleasurable, you're going to continue pleasuring or go to the hospital and stop the gangrene from going to your heart. When we get that we're one, beyond just the concept that we're all one, to that space, there's nothing we won't take care of together. And that's the calling in each one of us, is this calling for true lasting happiness, true fulfillment. And there's also this deep calling within all of us, this utopian idea, right? This idea that of heaven on earth, this idea that we can reach that it can happen here. So now that I have, before when I was teaching, I didn't have children. And I stepped away for 8 years, raising my daughter and just working a job. And people would seek me out and ask me, how are you living awake in normal life? By receiving life. But now there's something at stake for me, my children and there's children's children. So how do we really offer that world that we all hope for later on? And that's about you getting so real with yourself. And to get real with yourself is to start making a choice that maybe no one until this moment has ever invited you to. And that choice is right now, instead of choosing moving away, moving toward or against. Instead of choosing that what you are and what you'll become and what you'll do later is based on what your thoughts say about it, what society has shown you about it, what you're pushing away or rebelling against, is to choose right now to receive that you are. It's so simple, but it's so deep, it'll break through everything if you receive it. And then you can cultivate that. but just by being grateful. And there's other ways I take people through. One of my access points is called DBUM, don't believe your mind. Another one's called BTT, before the thought. So like a firework in the sky, you start to move your attention to the beginning of your thoughts. But there's a release that is occurring. And more people are hearing this than ever before. I think Eckhart Tolle's book came out, 10 years ago or more. And the popularity of Awakening and the realization that with this me story, this individual me, this selfishness has run rampant. That's what I love about millennials, okay? I mean, we all, if you're older, I'm 49. How old are you, Billy?
47.
All right, so close in age. So if we remember in our 20s, there's issues being 20-something, right? I mean, there's issues being at that age, right?
Yeah.
So beyond our judgment of the millennials and their age, because they got to go through their age and their nativity, they're being naive about things and thinking they know everything and all the complexities that happen at that age. But beyond that, that's amazing what's going on is that they're saying, hey, you know what? This whole thing, you want me to go to college, go in debt, and work in a cubicle. You want me to, like the whole thing just doesn't make sense finally, because they're born in a vibration where enough is enough. So if you can admit to yourself that enough is enough, that the me is strangling not just yourself, but strangling everything, then the new choice is to trust at the depth of level that if you can move your attention to receiving the grace that you are, that it can be that simple to discover endless freedom now.
Wow. Yeah.
And the way we reverse do that, we unlearn, is to recognize, so what is the addiction to our mind? And like you said, labeling. So the mind is always labeling, always. The mind is always creating a problem or solving a problem. Check it out for a few days. It's something I have people do in my course, Access Points, the Modern Life Meditation Plan, where over 8 weeks we do the access points every day. So instead of leaving life to go on retreat or meditate for 30 minutes a day, you're in life, in real time, starting to shift out of the separate paradigm. So you're in life, fully alive, living it, and starting to receive meditation moment to moment. So you start to notice that, wow, is there ever a moment where your mind is not creating a problem or solving a problem? The mind's always doing it. So that's the operating system of the mind. Okay, that's how the computer operates. It's constantly labeling, and that labeling is dissecting. It's pulling things apart to separate it. Why? Because it can't face the unknown. The unknown is fearful, and the unknown, it can be destroyed. Right? So the whole mechanism is always constantly protecting itself not to be destroyed. And that's the loop. And the irony is, when you discover oneness, you know that you are more than just a separate self.
Yeah.
Right? But yet your DNA and you are included. And by some miracle, here we are.
Brian, if someone would like to, and hopefully they will, want to connect with you and, get involved in your program, how should they go about doing that?
So you can, my website is brianmarc.com, BRIANMARC.com. And on there, you can sign up for our mail list and our newsletter. You can also email me at brian@brianmarc.com. So BRIAN@BRIANMARC.com. And directly email me. On Instagram, I go live throughout the week. I'm moving on from a full-time job into coming back into sharing this publicly with people. So I work a full-time job, have 3 children. So what I want to let people know is that, listen, you don't need to go run off to some ashram for 50 years to find freedom. So you can contact me directly there. Myself or somebody on my staff will always get back to you. So I'm here in support of your deepest awakening to oneness. The kingdom of heaven is within. And since you're bringing up Christ, and I like to call people to their own humanity. And if we think about when Christ was on the cross, there's a moment where he's, Father, why have you forsaken me? And here is somebody who has great clarity, and in that moment clearly is suffering again and stuck and caught in the horror of being human. But that moment comes and goes. And the next moment he turns to the man next to him and says, I will remember you in heaven. So he remembers his role. He remembers his purpose. He remembers he's one with God. He knows who he is, right? For an instant, it's almost not there. So you don't have to try to get there. Start to receive yourself. You can play a game. Put oneness first. Put God first. Start seeing everybody as God. Start seeing everything and just notice that everything is. And then just start seeing how your mind labels everything and everyone. And don't try to even get rid of that. Nothing to get rid of. Nothing to get to, nowhere to go. Breathing in that you are perfectly created as you, and the whole kingdom is within you. That's love.
Yeah, indeed. Sorry, I'm a little choked up. Brian, I don't even know what to say, man. Usually I say thank you, but I think it goes beyond words. It's been amazing talking to you and having you here today. I really do appreciate it.
It's really my pleasure. You know, I was going to move on in other careers and stuff and was offered things, but I kept turning that down until my daughter was to an age where I knew I would come back and share. And it's my, not only is it, do I feel it beyond obligation, but it's my pleasure. You know, it's like, I learned in sharing with people that you can't give this to somebody, right? When the fruit is ready to fall, it does. But we are truly collaboratively here together so you can support one another. And if you're trying to get up when they go climb these mountains, they don't go up on their own. They go up with a guide. They go up with technology. They go up with things to keep them warm. So you don't have to climb that mountain alone any longer. There's people here who can support you. You don't have to go break your leg or die to get to the top. You know, so I'm here to support people in that journey, and it's beautiful to meet you, and I really am grateful for being here, and thank you for having me here.
Would you like a source of continuous inspiration and support to help keep you moving forward in the development of your self-confidence? Then join the Unshakable Self-Confidence private Facebook group. Not only does the Unshakable Self-Confidence Facebook group connect you with other like-minded individuals who have made the decision to stop letting fear and self-doubt rule their life, you'll also have access to our Unshakable Self-Confidence Facebook Live Q&A sessions every Friday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Because we're here to provide you a clear path to confidence so you can believe in yourself, achieve your goals, and enjoy your life. So join the group today